Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Property Buyer and Sellers Podcast. Welcome along. I hope you're well. It is the 11th of October 2024, Friday, as I'm recording this, and the Renters' Rights Bill is coming. We expect it to get royal assent in the spring of 2025 and become law sometime afterwards, probably the summer. It could be later. We hope there's going to be a more sensible leading time. What will it mean to you, the landlord? Well, things are about to get a little more stringent. You're going to have to give longer notice periods in terms of, particularly the worrying one for many landlords is rent arrears, meaning that you now need to give 3 months notice. If your tenant's in arrears, they need to be 3 months of arrears, and then you serve notice. So effectively, we're talking about a 4-month period before you can take legal action. That is a worry for many landlords, of course. And one of the bigger ones that I mentioned in my last podcast is the ability of landlords to obtain a rent increase. Under the current system, the tenants can appeal to the first tier tribunal if they think the rent is unfair, and they will adjudicate. And then if they adjudicate that the rent was fair in the first place, it will be backdated to the original date that the notice was put in. And that rent could go up above the level that's been asked for as well as below. Under the new system, the rent is going to be capped if the tenant appeals to, at a maximum, the amount that the landlord has asked for, and cannot go above that. So from a landlord's perspective, it can only go down or be the same. But most importantly, it will only be effectively due from the point when the first tier tribunal actually adjudicates on the rent, meaning that tenants will have a vested interest in taking rent increases to tribunal. That's a real worry because the tribunals, in my view, are going to be absolutely swamped. So we could be talking about a very, very long period of time before any rent increases can be implemented. What will this mean in practical terms? Well, landlords will try and get the highest possible rent from the start, knowing that there's going to be a drag on this. And this is what the government wants. They want to try and push everything down, try and suppress the levels of rent increase. But I think many landlords will be shocked by this. 3-month period before you can start to serve a notice on a tenant for rent arrears. This is a worry for many landlords because effectively by the time you serve the notice, which is now 4 weeks, not 2, that'll be 4 months before you start with legal action. That's a long period of time to have no money coming in, isn't it? So what's the upshot of this? Well, for most landlords, rent guarantee and legal protection will become crucial and critical, not just a desirable add-on. And what this means is, in turn, that landlords will have to be much more discerning about the tenants they take because the rent guarantee products require tenants to jump through certain hurdles. On top of that, you can no longer accept upfront rent payments of more than 1 month, meaning that if a tenant's in a slightly precarious situation for whatever reason and just wants to get on the ladder and get a chance of renting a property, you'll be less likely to take them. So the most vulnerable in society, sadly, will find it harder than anyone to rent a property because if you can't prove certain things in the first place, then a landlord's risk would be so much higher by taking you because they can't accept any rent payments which are higher than 1 month. You do get situations where people come from overseas and they offer upfront payments to landlords, so landlords have a bit of security and can see that this person can actually pay. That won't be possible anymore. So rent guarantee and legal protection for me is going to get more expensive. Why is it going to get more expensive? Well, because it's going to take longer to get to court in the first place. And then when you're in court, there's going to be more outstanding because we've got that extra month, remember, and then that extra 2 weeks. This is all going to knock things on a little bit more. And then if you put that on top of the fact that many landlords will be serving Section 21 notices right now, the courts are going to be jammed. There is talk about a digital portal. I think Rachel Reeves mentioned it briefly. I'm skeptical about this, but hopeful. I think the digitization of the courts is essential for landlord confidence going forwards. And one of the problems with all this is landlord confidence. Many of the things that we're talking about, though, having said that, on the flip side, are not that different from where they are now. I mean, all tenancies being open-ended, well, when a current tenancy ends anyway, and a short hold tenancy, it becomes a periodic tenancy. So no change there then in many respects for landlords. The other thing is that as far as rent increases are concerned, you'll have to use the Section 13 process, which if you've done rent increases in that way before, no change again. So many things will stay the same, but many things will change. Deposit protection, this will be critical in the process. as it is already, to be fair. But there are alternative providers where you can use uh, insured deposit rather than a physical deposit, and that means you won't have to follow the legislation as far as making sure certificates are done in time, etc. So that will come to the fore as well. Tenancy agreements will look different, but will be simpler and, as I've mentioned, open-ended. I think the 1 month maximum rent thing could be a problem, and it will lead to the needy losing out. And that's what worries me about that is, as government say they're there to protect tenants. Well, what kind of tenants? Because actually here, the people that are losing out are the most needy in society. So that for me is just a crazy situation. But there we are. No doubt you'll have more questions on the Renters Reform Bill, or the Renters' Rights Bill, I should say. The Reform Bill was obviously dumped on wash up last time around. The Renters' Rights Bill is far more draconian than the Renters Reform Act. But nonetheless, it's not unworkable, it's not undoable. Landlords can still get their properties back. Yes, Section 21 is going, but you'll still be able to evict, albeit it will take a little bit longer, under Section 8 if you want to sell your property, if your tenants are in arrears, or if you want to move back in, or if a family member wants to move back in. They're there still. So there will still be ways of getting your property back. My suspicion is, and my gut feeling is, it's just going to take you a little bit longer. Now onto the market, what's going on? Well, funny enough, we seem to have had a little bit of a lift this week in terms of numbers of people coming through the doors and registering looking for properties, which is unusual for this time of year and interesting to see. We've certainly had a quieter September than we normally anticipate with what I call the mums market. Not as many mums and dads selling up and moving on. I think that may be a result of interest rates having increased over the last year or so. And some of those increases, obviously, they only hit in a staggered way. If you're on a fixed rate, you don't feel the new rates until your existing fixed rate ends. And I'm still speaking to people that are on a fixed rate, and I'm speaking to people that are shocked by where their rates have gone to. And of course, that especially applies to landlords. Now, this is not financial advice, of course, but if you are a landlord on a particularly high rate, make sure you speak to your lender and find out what the alternatives are. Because often with buy-to-let lenders, what we're finding is that their rates are punitive on their standard variable. But if you look at their rates on offer to you, and they have to offer other rates to you, then some of those are a bit more palatable. Not fantastic, but a bit more palatable. So do look at what the options are. Of course, you can refinance with other lenders if your circumstances allow. Many times that won't apply though, because with interest rates higher, some of the tests of the rent ratio versus the mortgage no longer work for some landlords. Where does all this lead? Well, I expect we're going to see a number of landlords just resign from the sector and come out. And, you know, the government have said that they didn't think it would be a bad thing for those that are highly geared to leave the sector. Well, you know, there is a school of thought that the lack of supply will just exacerbate the crisis. And so I'm certainly of that way inclined. I think that what we're doing here is frightening some landlords, and that's a dangerous place to be. And I know the government are making a statement here that they want to help tenants, and this is policy, it's what people voted for. However, when you alienate landlords in this way, and that's how many feel, you may find that they actually come out of the sector altogether and choose other investments, which is their right and choice, of course. But I just think that's not going to help when we have no alternative. You know, the whole thing about this is if you want to increase the choice for tenants, then you need to increase supply. If you want to reduce rents, you need to increase supply. And none of the legislation that's come forward has addressed the supply side of this issue. It's all about helping, inverted commas, the tenants. But when landlords feel that it's unbalanced, they may leave the sector. Certainly landlords, if you're thinking it's all bad, then it's not fantastic for you, but it won't be the end of the world either. There are many reasons why you should stay in the sector. There are many reasons why property will still be a solid and robust investment going forward, in my view, including the fact that it always keeps pace with inflation, and you've still got the bricks and mortar, and there aren't many investments where you've got that solid physical asset that will always be in demand if you're in a good commuter area. So that's it as far as the Renters Reform Act and tenancies and landlords are concerned. Still busy on that side, by the way, and rents just really are flying. The biggest problem we have is 20, 30 people applying for every single property, sometimes up to 150, 200. And the supply of people is incredible and quite sad, actually. And of course, what it means is that landlords can cherry pick the ones in better situations financially so that they're more assured of getting the rent, which will become more critical as the new legislation comes in. It's also going to be critical that you're with a letting agent that understands and keeps pace with the new regime. And we've got your back on that. We hope your agent has as well. And if they haven't, then you need to think about using an agent that has, and you certainly need to think about that rent guarantee and legal protection. There are lots of providers out there. I'm not going to mention names. Many agents, including us, have our own supplier built into our system of managing properties. As far as the selling market is concerned, we suspect it will quieten down within the next 4 weeks. It always does. But the good news is it's busier than expected for this time of year, and prices have been holding up quite well. So if you are thinking, should I pull off the market or hang on? I would hang on at the moment. Hang on and see how it goes for the next couple of weeks. We'll advise you what we think, and that's here in London. Obviously, each market has kind of macro situations where, maybe for a certain reason, coastal areas are popular at a certain time of year, such as the holiday time. That's when we're dead, funnily enough, and so on and so forth. So different areas will have different characteristics. Student areas will get busy in student term times, of course, when it comes to investors and, of course, lettings. And for our area as a South London commuting suburb, what we find is that it starts to tail off, usually about the winter. So we expect as it gets colder and darker, the families will stop coming out so much. And we'll find less people looking to buy a home. The problem for people that are looking to buy and sell is twofold. One, can you find a buyer? But of course, the other side of the coin is, can you find somewhere to go? And this time of year, the problem is the supply level is down wherever you're looking. Not many people are starting to market at this time of year. It tends to come stronger next year in the springtime when the supply will open up and there'll be a bit more, hopefully, for you to choose from. But as far as the market's concerned right now, it's certainly holding its own, and we're finding that good quality investments are in quite high demand. We've got lots of people chasing some things that we've got on the market for investment, including our auction lots, which are getting pre-auction bids, and that's quite a strong side of the market as well. Obviously, we're on tender hooks regarding the announcements at the end of October from Rachel. What she's going to do with things like capital gains tax and pensions could have a significant impact on what people do with their property side of their lives, which is often their biggest asset going forwards. We'll keep you advised on that. But as far as the market's concerned right now, it's business as usual, really. And as far as the Renters Reform Act is concerned, some of you, I know, are really worried. My view is you're right to be worried. You need to get your procedures right. And if you're not the sort of person that can get your ducks in a row, either get your places managed or sell up, move on to another type of investment, because there's lots of administration that will be required and it will need to be correct in order for you to protect yourself and your business. Because letting a property, whether you're a single property landlord or a portfolio landlord, it is a business, whether you consider it a side hustle for you or a full-time job. It really is important that you get the administration right. That's always been important, but this is going to be more important than ever going forward with this new legislation coming up. So that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with another edition and some more updates for you and some more property news. Until then, look after yourselves and your family. Ciao.